Okay, we're back. Hi, Rich Brown Rewind here with Rich Brown, me. We have a really great guest tonight. I'm very excited to have on. This is somebody, for those of you who have enjoyed what we've done on Beyond Vaudeville and even Oddville, this guy was here right in the very beginning. And yet you probably wouldn't know his face from the show because a lot of what he was doing was behind the scenes. Although he did appear as Mr. Doug, the beloved hairdresser to the Starz with Mr. Austin Velez on our infamous episode with Al Lewis. So he's going to be talking about that and his memories of that. But he is also, when he's not helping us and working with us on Beyond Vaudeville and Oddville, he's an accomplished writer and editor. He's written this book, which we'll talk about a little later. And he has a new book coming out about Anton LaVey, the infamous Satanist. And we're going to talk about that too. He's been a writer-editor for Entertainment Weekly, editor-in-chief of Spin Magazine, TV Guide, Condé Nast. He even worked for Fangoria. I'm sure there are a lot of you out there that love Fangoria. Years back, and currently still working as an editor with the Toronto Star. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my longtime friend and comrade at Beyond Vaudeville, Mr. Doug Broad. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Rich. How are you?
I'm well. Did I get everything right in that intro?
It was the best I've ever heard. I appreciate that.
So, Doug, I don't need to tell you this because you were there, but for those watching, Doug and I met back at NYU on the Plague Humor magazine, which is kind of where these shows got its roots, has its roots. And Doug, any earliest memories of the live Beyond Vaudeville shows that we were doing at NYU before we ended up doing the show on TV?
Well, I just remember being excited that NYU would give us so much money to do these oddball, parties. I remember we had like film parties and we had a show in the pub. One of the first Beyond Vaudevilles was a show in the pub, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And my dad actually was amazed that NYU was throwing so much money at the Plague to spend on all these parties and shows.
Wait, your dad was amazed or disgusted?
He was a little bit of both, I think. It's like, this is where my money's going. But no, I just love the fact that NYU actually kind of supported all of this. And if it weren't for their generosity, I mean, I would think that maybe all of this might not have happened. So, props to NYU. But no, I've always, have such fond memories of the live shows and of doing the TV shows. It's just such a great thing to have been associated with. I know I'm sounding sincere and overly earnest, but it's true. And I got to do it with all my friends. So it was a great experience all over.
And you got to meet the Partridge Family's Danny Bonaducci, most importantly.
Yeah, I did. I recall when he hosted the live show for us, we picked him up at the airport, and he was that was right after he had some scandalous behavior. And I just recall him being like kind of a grizzled guy, but like super nice and super appreciative of what we were doing with him and what he was going to be doing for us. But it's weird. I mean, the idea of working on this, on these shows with people who like you've admired throughout your childhood. Like I was a huge Partridge Family fan. And in fact, the Partridge Family album was the first album I ever bought with my parents' money. I guess I was like 1970 or 71. And, and then to be his kind of escort is kind of an amusing little footnote. Also, I recall when we had Adam West hosting the live show at NYU. Steve Korn and I helped write his introductions for the performers that night. So we sat with him in a room and we worked on some stuff. And then I recall this very strange comment that his minder or his rep had after we had gone through the cards with him. He said, would you mind leaving the room? Adam and I like to have some time alone for cards, for like a card game. I just was very like puzzled by that. I guess they needed to relax or maybe to get up a little bit. I don't know what the deal was, but I subsequently met Adam a couple of times, actually, when I was at TV Guide magazine. I met him on a boat at Comic-Con. He was pushing something. I don't recall what it was, but I met him and I asked him if he remembered that event at NYU, and he didn't remember it. I did tell him I wrote his cards. He didn't really get that. And then he came up to the office when I was at TV Guide and spoke with him again, and he had no memory of any of that. But he was a genuinely sweet guy, and it was nice to catch up.
Doug, I got the impression when he was playing cards that there was some sort of substance going in, whether it was booze or because
I don't want to cast aspersions because I have no idea, but it did seem like something untoward might have been happening.
Right.
So,
well, God rest his soul, Adam Batman West. He was wonderful that night. He was wonderful on Batman, and Adam, whatever you were doing that night, it was magical. So Doug, you eventually, when we moved over to do the TV show. Oh, by the way, I see people are joining us live. Please feel free if anyone has questions for Doug about his experiences. Just put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. Toto Payne Diaz says Adam knew Playboy ways. Okay.
Okay, that explains it. I guess.
And Mac Banks is asking, what was your guys' favorite episode of Adam West's Batman? Boy,
that's a tough one.
I mean, it was a fantastic show, and I don't know if I could pinpoint one. Doug, is there?
I can't really pinpoint an episode, but I can tell you who my favorite villain was.
Okay.
And that was Vincent Price as Egghead. I loved him, and I also loved whenever Eartha Kitt was on. So those are my biggest, my best memories of that show.
Jermaine Freelance is asking, did you make much money, or was this all for the love? Doug, how much money did we make off these shows?
We made $0. In fact, we gave money away. I mean, the NYU live shows, we had donated money to the Coalition for the Homeless.
Right.
So we were actually giving back to the community.
Yes, we all had day jobs, always had day jobs. And yeah.
Yeah, this was all extracurricurript stuff. I mean,
with the exception of Oddville, there was obviously MTV.
Correct.
We weren't doing it for free for MTV. R.I.P. Joey the Monkey, says Vox Clementis. Yes, of course. John Walsh, who played Joey the Monkey. Doug, you knew John. Actually, Doug lived with John.
Did.
For a short while. Yeah.
And I guess it was like 1989 or 1990. I moved into an apartment with John Walsh, Joey the Monkey, and Steve Korn, director of Oddville, and of Beyond Vaudeville. And we lived together in an apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment in Rego Park, Queens. It was one of the situations where it started off really, really well. It was 3 college buddies rooming together, and then I just had to get out.
Well,
and I moved back to Manhattan.
And true to Joey the Monkey form, John kept his room much like a monkey might, right?
Yeah, he did. I just recall. I mean, he always kept his door closed. Thank God, because the odor in there was just beyond belief. But he used to let his dirty clothes just pile up in this huge mountain in the middle of his floor in his room. And I just, after 10 months of that, I was like, you know what? Maybe I could live by myself again in Manhattan, which is what I did.
I'm not sure the Joey the Monkey robe was ever steamed either.
No, and I also remember one other thing that happened in the house that I got really upset about. So he brought home a mouse from a pet store. I guess it was the kind of mouse you feed to snakes.
Right.
And he had it in his room and he let it roam free in the house. And I'm like, dude, we can't have mice in our house. That's just not cool.
Well, that's what you get for rooming with a guy who plays a monkey, I guess. I don't know what to say.
He's very friendly with animals.
Yeah. Anyway, so Doug, you did end up appearing on the show early on, and happened to be on the show with Al Lewis. That's beloved by many of the fans. And I thought we'd take a look at the clip, and then we can talk about that experience. You were appearing along with Austin Velez as his hairdresser. And let's take a look at that.
Okay, the show has just begun. We now have Austin Velez, who's known as the Sinatra Double. And he is, when you see him, you'll know why, because he does look like Sinatra. And we also have with him his personal hairdresser to the Starz, Mr. Doug, who hairdresses Mr. Velez and hairdresses many stars. And let's introduce them now. Come please over here. Austin Velez, Mr. Doug. Austin, what have you been up to lately?
Well, I'm continuing my efforts to tell the public that I am the next Frank Sinatra. And, you know, being here on the show and all, it's a great honor for me to be here on the same stage as Mr. Al Lewis.
It is?
He is my inspiration. When I was a young boy watching the Munsters, I saw the justice that this man did to the Count, to Count Dracula. And I said to myself that I could do just the same thing with Frank Sinatra. And this man is giving me the inspiration.
Wait a minute. I don't want to be held responsible for that. Wait a minute.
Well,
wait a minute.
But you are.
Don't I have anything to say about this?
Okay, well,
wait a minute. What is
we'll get back later. Okay, and now, okay, and you're going to introduce
Why don't you hold him responsible?
Mr. Doug.
I am a very fortunate person. I was born with a great singing voice. I was born fortunate enough to look exactly like one of the greatest celebrities in the world, and I realized that to make it in Hollywood, I needed the very best. I needed a man who was not just another queer who cut hair. I needed the very best hair cutter I could get, the hair cutter to the stars. And fortunately, though he's very busy and has many great clients, I was fortunate enough to get Mr. Doug.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Austin.
Mr.
By the way, so I noticed Austin Velez said he didn't want to get just another queer hairdresser. This obviously was what year? This was going back some time, but I guess it was sort of in keeping with the way a Frank Sinatra type would speak.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm sure he was very cognizant of that, and that was intentional. I don't know.
All right, let's see what Mr. Doug has to say.
Mr. Doug. So you did this hair here.
Yes, I did. This is a very basic style, just flat on top, shapely around the sides. Very nice, very professional, very Vegas to fit his image. Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
It's a little like that comedian that brings his hair down. Who is that? I can't think of his name.
Not Marty Allen?
I don't remember. All right, well, okay, and now maybe you'd like to, why don't you do my co-host's hair?
Certainly.
Just come around. Oh, did you bring some pictures with you?
Oh, yes, I did.
You want to show some of those pictures? There's a mic over here. Over.
Oh, Well, right here I have pictures of some of the famous celebrities I've cut hair for. For instance, right here I have Chick Corea, the very famous Latin musician. His hairstyle, as you can see, is dark and it's very Latin looking. He seems very sensitive in spite of some of the frenetic jazz fusion he did in the 70s, but it's a nice haircut. It suits him. It very much suits him.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like Charlie Manson's haircut. Yeah. Did you cut Charlie? Yeah.
Yes, we'll get to that.
Yeah, I remember Charlie. Yeah.
Garrett
Yeah.
Graham.
How fickle fame is, they forgot him already.
I did Garrett Graham's hair in Phantom of the Paradise, the great Brian De Palma movie, and happens to be one of the underrated talents of our time, I believe. And his hairstyle is patterned after Lucille Ball's, as you can see.
Yeah, that's nice. That's very
Right
nice.
here is Pat McCormick, the comedian's comedian. He's great,
Yeah.
great haircut.
That's wonderful.
Archbishop Fulton Sheen, he was the fashion plate of the Archdiocese. He was very
Yeah, that's nice. It's very
Lee
nice.
Iacocca's very nice American hairstyle.
Yeah.
And Mary Hart, luscious Mary.
Oh, yeah, that's
Very nice
nice.
haircut.
That's very nice.
Do
you have any pictures of those that you've done? I mean, no, I mean, these are...
Yes, I've done all
Oh,
these.
you've done
These are
these?
all
Sorry.
these that I've
Sorry
done.
about that. Who
Here's
is that?
Shelley Winters, very giving, loving actress, nice hairstyle. as you
Oh,
can
Chubby, yeah, Chubby. Yeah,
see. And right here is Gene Hackman. He pioneered the dry look in the 70s.
that's a wonderful hairpiece. Did you
did
cut his
everything,
hairpiece?
as you
Yeah,
can see right
very
here.
nice. You also do hair pieces? Oh, that's
And
nice. That's nice. Very nice.
Very Manson, I did his hair too, but he was
Charlie
sort of
Manson,
touchy.
yeah.
He wanted me to take
Yeah,
much off his
yeah.
hair.
He remembers you. He does.
Okay,
He's
Doug,
looking forward to seeing you again.
we have
Wow. So that seemed pretty challenging. You were trying to get through these things, and Al Lewis would not stop talking.
I have to say that, I mean, if I have to be like interrupted by somebody, it's like, let it be Al Lewis, because he actually was trying to land some jokes. And I was actually surprised that I was trying to land some jokes too. And some of them I thought stuck. I mean, my delivery was terrible, but I don't know, calling Archbishop Fulton Sheen the fashion plate of the Archdiocese.
Yeah,
And I have to correct myself. That wasn't Charles Manson at the end. That was Steve Railsback as Charles Manson in Helter Skelter. One thing that it comes back to me is when Al's called Shelley Winters chubby.
Uh-huh.
And she's chubby. Yeah, she's chubby.
Yeah, and by the way, when I was trying to think of the comedian's hairstyle that I mentioned earlier, like it was that guy, Barbuti, was that his name? Pete Barbuti?
Pete Barbuti. I know the name. I don't remember what he looks
I
like.
think he was a comedian that would comb his hair forward, and I think that's what I was trying to grab for. Box Clemantis was asking, did Mr. Doug do Yul Brenner's hair?
Probably. I would take credit if I did. Sure.
Mac Banks is asking, how did you all get Al Lewis on the show? Often we would get our celebrity guests when they would make the mistake of having listed phone numbers in the New York phone book. In the case of Al Lewis, I don't think that was the case. I was writing some right out of college. I was writing some celebrity profiles for this Manhattan Spirit giveaway newspaper, and I had interviewed him, and I interviewed Mason Reese, and I think they ended up being two of our first, celebrity guests, and because we had a nice time, and I interviewed them, and then all of a sudden they were on the show and probably having second thoughts about coming. Although he was a very good sport on the show. And do you have any other memories, Doug, of Al Lewis? Or
let's go back to that show for a minute. Now, what year was that approximately?
That was 80. I think it was 86.
Okay. I just want to clarify something. So when you look at the set at that time, all those posters, all those movie posters I brought to the show, because at the time I had my first job out of school at a magazine called Video Review, the world authority on home video. And it was a consumer magazine that catered to people who, were getting VCRs and camcorders and, getting VHS tapes to play on them. Mm-hmm. So we would review movies. At the time, a lot of the movies were just like this B movie crap that they were just putting out there to the rental stores. So they would send me all this great promotional material I had no use for. So I brought it to the show, and we would hang up, all these posters. We would hang up, we would put up the standees. We had these like cardboard standees that were life size. So that's just one note about how we decorated.
Yeah, those posters were invaluable because we had very little time to fill a lot of space, and we had to travel by subway to get to the studio. So being able to just pack a bunch of those posters in a bag was, it was invaluable.
Yeah. But going back to Lewis, I just remember him being just after the show. He was actually he was a nice guy. He was kibitzing with us in the lobby of the studio, and then obviously he hosted a live show for us. And I mean, I think he was. It was at the time in his career where I don't think he needed to do much, and he just wanted to be remembered. He wanted to be kept busy, and that's when he also started his restaurant. He became the face of Grandpa's, what was it called?
Bella Gente.
Grandpa's Bella Gente, and he was actually a greeter at this Italian restaurant. Who knows how that situation came about? But there might have been some gambling debts involved. I don't want to. I don't want to besmirch his rep, but
there was a suspected mob hit early one morning outside his restaurant. Some guy in a car met his fate. Who knows what was going on there.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, so he was, I just remember him just being really, nice after the show and chatting with us. And yeah, I think he dug it. I think he was able to use his chops.
Mm-hmm. And any memory of Gretchen Wiener, who was on that show as well?
My memory of her was that she was very strange, as you could see on the show. And the distinction that she has in my head is that she actually is from not far from where I grew up, and in the 5 towns of Long Island. I lived across the border in Queens, and it was like 2 miles away from my house. And my mother frequented the same beauty parlor as she did. So my mother knew who she was. I think I told you this, and that, whatever,
wow. I
38 years ago, whatever it was.
Wow.
But yeah, so my mom knew who she was.
Well, we have a comment. The Al Lewis episode was my favorite. I know this is off subject, but when are you going to have David Green back? Hope you do soon. No telling. It was a lot of work getting him on here once, but we'll try. We'll try again. And also a comment, that TV movie about the family was scary as hell. That actor did a very scary Manson. So, Doug, you've reviewed a lot of movies. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would. Steve Railsback was very effective playing Charles Manson. I agree.
So, Doug, in addition to appearing as Mr. Doug, you would work cameras on the show, and you also would work puppets along with Kathy Kickert and whoever was kind of visiting that day. What was that experience like working the puppets?
I actually loved it. I mean, I did the camera a few times when we were uptown, like way uptown. 207th Street was the studio, I believe, or 210th Street. But I almost primarily worked on puppets. I love doing it because it actually, I think I brought something to the show because I think I had good timing. I knew what puppet to use, when to start annoying people with the puppet, how to do, little skits with the puppets. Like they would be doing something while something else was going on and Steve would cut to it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It got very sweaty and cramped back there. So it was not very comfortable for the half hour we were shooting. But I also recall, David was a method actor. There's no two ways about it. He got into the character, and when you see him like turning red and getting really wound up, he actually is doing that. He's getting wound up. And I just recall sometimes, maybe the purple chicken puppet is pecking at Dave, and he would bolt up off the sofa and like punch my arm. And he's punching the puppet, but I'm the puppet. So I don't think he realized his own strength or like what he was doing. So I had the bruises to prove it. So yeah, that was a big memory.
Was it ever scary for you? Because I mean, honestly, sometimes I would get very intimidated by David. Toto Payne Diaz says David's backslaps came very close. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I was never fearful of him because Dave was like a sweetheart. He was a scary guy on camera, but like off camera, he could not have been sweeter. But when he got into character, he could do some damage, and he did, obviously. I mean, I think he knocked you a couple of times, didn't he?
Oh yeah. And were you back behind the couch on the Christmas episode where David actually stood up on the couch and was starting to rock the set? Do you remember?
Probably. I don't recall, but probably.
Yeah, that seemed like a very scary time for anyone that was back there. So anyway, you then made the change with us over to Oddville. You were one of two primary producers producing all the talent that appeared on that show, and there was a lot of talent. It was 66 episodes. We probably had one celebrity, one band, and at least maybe 6 different
five or six. Yeah.
And all done.
To go back 1 second, I'm sorry. So
Yep.
You were saying we did 66 episodes on MTV. How many did we do for public access or cable access?
That was more like 75, I think, something like that.
Over 10 years, right? A 10-year
Yes.
span. And we did 66 in a 6-month span. That was phenomenal.
That included pre-production and but basically we had to shoot all those, and we had like 20 weeks for the whole thing or something. So I wanted to show some of the audition tapes that we got, because basically it was a kind of a team of young people that would go around. We could only have guests on the MTV show that were in the New York metropolitan area. They didn't want to travel anybody and pay for travel or so. It was mostly like colleges and senior centers. I
mean, I think our mandate was essentially we need to get like stupid people tricks. That's what it was. It was a celebrity guest. It was a band that MTV supplied, and then it was stupid human tricks.
Right.
So we did we held auditions on campuses around town. I think we might have had a couple of auditions in the office. I'm not quite sure. Yeah. But also I remember you scouted, talent shows on Long Island. So we put an APB out on every kind of strange act we could find. And we'll get into this later, I think, but just how TV has ratcheted up what is okay to show.
Right.
And given the restrictions that we had in the mid to late 90s on our show, like we couldn't show specific things, and they were always afraid of people getting hurt. So we'll talk later about
that. I think we came on in the wake of some little kid had lit the family's house on fire because they saw something on Beavis and Butthead. So yes, MTV was very concerned about imitative behavior. So let me see if let me call up the audition. Yep. Well, that's not it, unless we want to watch the opening again. I think it's this. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Let's just preface this. This was a kid named Nassim, who showed up at a college audition, but he didn't actually go to college. He just lived near the college, right? I believe so. Yeah.
Oh, and I was just going to say, so his talent, or so he said, was his hands would wrestle with each other, and they essentially each had a life of their own, and he had no idea which one was going to win.
Okay. And obviously, when this tape came in, it was like, can we get him here yesterday? So let's take a look at this. It almost seemed like he got him there, but
It
no.
goes on forever. And the thing is, if this kid did this today, oh, we have a winner.
Nope.
Oh, no, we don't. Ah, there we go.
With the count.
So there's a winner. Okay, so tell the camera what you were telling me before about how you never know who's gonna win.
How I never what?
How you never know who's gonna win.
Oh, well, when I do this, I put my mind somewhere else. And I let my hands decide who's gonna win.
Now, do you do this a lot?
Yes.
Just whenever
Whenever I'm bored.
whenever you're bored, you just let your hands wrestle each other.
Yep.
So you feel like they have lives of their own a little bit?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm with my friends, we play a game where we just like grab their wrists and just like dominate, see who has control over each other's wrists.
And so you have a lot of practice now.
Yeah.
Because you do it with yourself.
Yes.
Interesting. Where are you?
Wow.
Okay, I want to point out something. He blinked once during that interview. Once. And yeah, I mean, and if this kid did that today and put it on TikTok, he'd get 20 million views.
Yeah, he was pretty special. I think we had him on the show twice on Oddville, and it's funny. I tried to reach him again for other shows that I've been working on and over the years, and had a really hard time tracking him down. I finally tracked him down when we were going to do the live Philomoka show in Philadelphia, and he was still living in New Jersey, and unfortunately, he had retired as a professional hand wrestler. So he couldn't get him to do it one more time. But I haven't given up the dream that someday we can do a rematch between his hands. No one is saying in chat, this should be an Olympic sport. Agreed. And Toto Payne says, slippery match at bedtime.
Okay.
That means. Okay, let's take a look at another guy. Now, this guy, we really wanted on the show again once we saw his tape, but I think you guys, he didn't want to come on the show. He had a second.
I think I should preface this. So we obviously we did 10 years of Beyond Vaudeville for free. We did it, on our own time, and then we all had jobs. At the time of Oddville, I had been working at Entertainment Weekly as a senior editor, and I had asked my bosses if I could take 6 months off, a sabbatical, to do the show, and they happily agreed to that. I was very fortunate. They said, as long as you come back, sure, go do it. And I was able to do that. And I don't know where I was going with that story. Oh, yeah. And I ended up actually writing a story for Entertainment Weekly about the show and about being part of the show, being a producer on the show. And I think I categorized the next act as one of the ones that got away. Someone who we were so taken with, but he flaked out and never did the show.
Well, let's take a look. Here he is. He was a college student that was at one of the college auditions and gave us this little surprise.
A lot of practice now.
Yeah.
Because you do it with yourself.
Yes.
Interesting. Where are you?
My major, actually, I don't know, creative writing.
Okay. And your age?
I'm 20.
Okay. And tell us about what you're going to do.
Well, it's a little thing, that little punching bag?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna play with it.
The epiglottis,
That's
as
right.
we learned today from Shane. Okay.
All
All right.
Do it now?
You're gonna pull it out, right? Is that okay? Go ahead. Oh. Wow. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. That's pretty amazing.
I think
How
maybe
did you
I won.
discover that?
Well, you see, there's ways to get out of class, right? And when you're a little kid, you want to get out of class, and you think, well, maybe I ought to shove my finger in the back of my throat. And you fake puke, and you go through 5 seconds of pain, and then you're out of class for a day. So after a while of trying this, after about a month or so, in 3rd grade, I found out that it didn't work anymore. I could keep playing around and move my fingers all the way back there. And then I found out that I could pull on that little thing, and I kept playing. I started stretching until finally I could do that.
So you stretched it, you think?
Yeah.
It wasn't okay.
I have no idea.
Is it uncomfortable now? Is it stretched?
No,
now?
it
You don't
feels
feel?
just fine.
Okay. That's great. Do you have any more?
Any more tricks?
Yeah.
No, I think that's about it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I can wiggle my ears, but I'm not very unusual for that.
Oh, well, let's see it. We had some wiggled ears. So maybe we can. Cool. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So, yeah, this guy had a great energy for us for the show, and and that he pulled that little punching bag out from the back of his throat that far. It just was. There were times when we would see things that just we couldn't have even imagined would be a possibility, right?
Yeah, I learned from that clip that it's called a uvula, and it sounds like it's a sexy part, but it's not. It's the punching bag in the back of your throat, and just imagine pulling that out. I mean, he obviously has no gag reflex because he didn't gag. Yeah, fascinating character, and I do recall the other one that got away. That we ended up not coming on the show was a guy who had an incredibly hairy back, and he would let people throw darts at it. That's quite a talent.
So that is, and that's along the lines. Now that's one that probably we wanted, but MTV balked at, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah. So that years after doing Oddville and working on other commercial shows, like that became something that was it became kind of an act that people would do, the darts in the back, and was more acceptable to TV outlets and audiences. But yeah, it was a lot tougher when we were doing this in 19.
Yeah, I mean, and it's MTV. MTV is to credit and to blame because they gave us Jackass, and Jackass just took all of this to the next level. And like on that show, literally anything went.
Right.
And I'm like the biggest fan of Jackass. I love all the shows. I love all the movies. I love the guys' personalities. It's just it's a great concept, and good for them. They actually move in a way. They move the culture forward because that gave rise to just anything goes on all of these shows now.
All right, let's take a look at this next one.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, X, Y, Z.
That smells quite delightful.
Cabbage.
How long have you been doing this?
Ever since I was able to swallow air and burp. I guess I was like 6 years old.
When did the Rasta part come into play?
I went to New Orleans and I just like started growing out my dreads. And Mardi Gras, Mardi Gras. I saw lots of,
And how long? And oh yeah, all right. So, well, thanks a lot for your time.
Hey.
I love that interview at the end there. It's kind of like, all right. So this was one of many people who would burp speak, and he did the whole alphabet. He ended up not being on the show. How many people would you say you likely saw that would burp speak in this process?
Yeah, this is one of the more common stunts that our college students could do. And for some reason, I still remember the one. We had a couple on the show. I think we had more. We had at least two on the show. One of them I just remember. I remember his name because his act was stunning, and that was Ryan McCormick, who his burps were so long and so loud. I was like, this kid's gonna go somewhere with that. I don't know where, but he's gonna go somewhere.
So he was a notch above the typical burper. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And this last, there's one more here. This is also someone who did not make it onto the show, who had a friend of his volunteer at this college audition to help him do his act.
Thank you.
And she just says, "Ow."
I think I remember seeing that in the office, and I was like, "Oh my God, we're gonna get sued."
Yeah, and I was like, "Well, I don't know. Maybe we still should have him on." But yeah, it seemed like the network didn't think that
Didn't
would.
we have someone who stopped an electric fan with their tongue?
Yes, yeah, we had that guy came on the show, and yeah, and that was something that again, like in the years after that, I would see some of these acts over and over again. People doing these kinds of things in sideshows, and Toto Payne says, "Now we're even, honey."
I think Toto Payne is giving us captions for the clip that we're showing. That's a good
So let's talk about your books. And oh wait, I had one more I wanted to show. Let me see if I have it here.
Okay, the show is just.
No, that's not it. Do I not have it here? Hold on, give me 1 second. I'm gonna add. Talk among yourselves, people. Here it comes.
Without further ado,
Here we go.
let's please welcome Ms. Elizabeth Tashchin.
So this is just one of the many Oddville guests who was booked. This was the Nut Lady, Elizabeth Tashchin. She had made an famous appearance on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, where she was a woman who was very serious about nuts. And let's just take a look at her.
Oh, nobody ever thinks about nuts. Nuts can be so beautiful if looked around. Take some home and handle them properly, artistically, and feel a new taste being born.
So when you look at something like this, Doug, and, having grown up with MTV and, when MTV was something, how weird was it that something like this was on MTV at this point?
It was weird. I mean, because we had people like her on the cable access show all the time. In fact, most of the shows were made up of people just like her. When MTV, took the show and remade it somewhat, and made it less about the quirky older individuals and more about, you know, the young, you know, stupid human tricks. The fact that they still had people like her on said something about, I think it said something about their faith in us, that the aesthetic of the show needed people like her on it. So props to MTV for like at least throwing us that bone. But, you know, if young kids today, I mean, I have a 17-year-old daughter now, and if she saw this, she might think it's funny and interesting, but it's like, why is she on this show with all the young people? Yeah. So
Right. And the thing I remember about Elizabeth Tashin is she took a train in from her Nut Museum in Connecticut. And by this point, her mind was a little off. And by the way, there's a great documentary about her. It's not easy to access. I think you can only purchase like a DVD of it or something, but it's really good if you get a chance to see it. But I remember that you know, sometimes we'd have to go out of our way to work with some of these people like her. And I think one of the associate producers actually went to meet her at Penn Station, and she was very concerned that this associate producer was a spy who had been sent, I think, by the CIA to investigate her. So it took a little while to get her to the studio, and that was just sort of another day on the job at Oddville. Anyway, let's talk about your books, and I'm real excited ever since you mentioned to me that you were going to do this book. There's a question from Mark John. Did you like doing Beyond Vaudeville or Oddville MTV more? Doug, do you have an answer to that?
I have to say I enjoyed doing Beyond Vaudeville more because I was happier with the aesthetic of the show. I think I was very happy and thrilled that MTV picked it up, but I did think that some of the quirkiness and the thing that made the show unique was kind of diluted on a way to MTV. So and it was the Beyond Vaudeville was just scrappier. It was just us having fun. So yeah, I would say Beyond Vaudeville was a better experience.
And the workload was a lot easier.
It was. It truly was. Yeah.
I bet there were more.
Shout out to Jeremiah Bosgang, who was instrumental in bringing Beyond Vaudeville to MTV.
Yes,
he deserves so much credit.
And Mark also says, I bet there were more restrictions with Oddville MTV. Yes, there were. And Sarah Rusi is on and says, hi, guys. You missed out on the ass-eating contest here at the Gathering an hour ago. Oh. Well, I guess there's always...
That was on my calendar, too. Oh.
All right. Let me call up. So there is the cover of your new book that's coming out, Doug, Born with a Tale, right in the middle there, with Anton LaVey. So, wow, I'm sure many of our viewers who are interested in these eccentric characters are familiar with the story of Anton LaVey, but I just put a couple of pictures there to give a sense of who he was. How do you describe Anton LaVey in a nutshell to somebody who doesn't know who he was?
Well, in 1966, San Francisco, Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan in his living room, essentially. It was just this philosophy of hedonism, self-indulgence, making yourself your own God. And it was something that kind of took off for quite a few years. He wrote the Satanic Bible, which is still in print today from a major publisher. It was written for Avon Books, and he wrote a few other books as well that have sold well. And, you know, he lived this very fascinating life. He claimed to be a lion tamer He played Calliope and the organ at carnivals and also at social functions all throughout California. So he's just this fascinating guy who, he had a fascinating background, whether or not all of it was true, which I investigate in the book. But yeah, I think it's a good story. It's a fun story. It's a bizarre story. It has some some tragedy and trauma as well. But that's it. That's a really big nutshell, but that's the nutshell.
And he created a lot of mythology about him. And I guess and like you said in your book, you're going to. By the way, when is the book available?
The book's published October 8th, just in time for Halloween. From Hachette Books. It's available. It's available on Amazon right now for pre-order and wherever fine books are sold.
Okay, and so you said that you get into trying to sift through all the lies and the mythology and what was real and what wasn't real. And I read that, and I don't know if you cleared this up, but that he actually got his image from a character that Don Rickles played of a Satanist. Is that
there's a story that he got his character from a Don Rickles portrayal on Wild Wild West, I believe, but I don't believe that at all. I think that someone just made the association because they looked similar. No, I think he actually was a big fan of the horror and sci-fi pulp magazines of the 30s and 40s when he was growing up. And Ming the Merciless had a very similar look from the Flash Gordon serials. So he also wanted to look like a medieval executioner with the bald head and the goatee. So I think there's a lot of influences that were behind his look.
And the that one photo there is that's him with his lion. So he actually kept this lion in his place in San Francisco?
He did. He lived in a house in the Richmond district, which is just a residential neighborhood in San Francisco. And at that time, there were no restrictions on keeping big cats as domestic pets. So he had a cage set up in his backyard where he kept Togar, his lion, but he also let Togar, roam around the house. He let him in the bedroom. He had a chain with an anchor on the floor of the bedroom. And he used to go to the grocery store with Togar on a leash. It's quite a spectacle.
And there in the upper right, there's he's on the cover of Look magazine. So this is like 1960s. I mean, were people just freaking out and horrified that somebody was, proposing that they worship Satan? And how was this received by America at that point?
I think actually people were kind of like, who is this cool, strange guy? I mean, he famously was on a TV show called The Joe Pine Show. It was a talk show with this very kind of antagonistic host, kind of like Morton Downey Jr., a precursor to Morton Downey Jr. And he held up really well under fire. He was very funny and he was very poised, and he was very articulate about what he was trying to do. And he was booked also on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and there are no tapes available of that, and I wish there were. I wish I could see it. But yeah, it was a time where there were all these kind of like interesting cults going on, benign cults, and this was a pretty benign cult as well. I think people thought he was an interesting guy. Like, who was this kind of strange, interesting guy? I don't think people really were afraid of him. That came a little later, especially in the 80s with the Satanic Panic, which I get into the book as well.
And now, and there was a connection between Anton LaVey and Sammy Davis Jr., right? And what was that all about?
There was, yeah, and Sammy was actually a Satanist. He was very publicly a Satanist, and he was kind of into weird stuff before he even knew about the Church of Satan. And I get into that somewhat in the book, but yeah, when he did a movie called Poor Devil on, and I believe it was on NBC. This Church of Satan, LaVey and his wife, and also their right-hand man, this guy Michael Aquino, they saw it, and they reached out to Sammy to let him know about the church, and Sammy knew about it, and they became friendly, and they met a number of times, but then I interviewed Sammy's publicist, who was around during that time, and he had some interesting things to say about LaVey and his church.
He must have been pretty old, Sammy Davis's publicist.
Yeah, I was able to get some guys who were probably in their 80s and 90s at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think if Anton LaVey had been available or alive in New York? Do you think he ever would have done a show like Beyond Vaudeville, and how he might have reacted to that?
I think if you had Tiny Tim on, he would have been there in a heartbeat. He was a huge Tiny Tim fan.
Oh, wow.
Huge Tiny Tim fan.
Huh.
Because he loved the old crooners like the Russ Columbos and the Al Jolsons. And he when he heard the first Tiny Tim album,
mm-hmm.
He thought he was the bee's knees.
And weirdly, he didn't like Anton LaVey did not like rock and roll and didn't respond to the satanic kind of rock stuff.
Not really. No, he just didn't like the music.
So would he have liked any of the artists featured in your previous book?
I think he probably would have thought Kiss were funny, or at least funny looking. But no, I don't think he would have any affection at all for the bands I cover in that book.
So anyone who hasn't gotten this book, I recommend it. It intertwines the stories of Kiss, Cheap Trick, Aerosmith, and a band named Starz. And if you're not familiar with Starz, because I'm guessing you're familiar with the others, you should get this book, and you can find out all about the connections. And I have to thank you, Doug, because you've taught me that Cheap Trick's Surrender is a great go-to at karaoke, and I'm going to share that tip with anyone watching.
It is.
So we actually, we got a comment from Ed Morrissey saying, "Great book!" ! All right. Well,
thank you, Ed. Ed has been a huge supporter of this book. And we know Ed. We know Ed from way back.
Yep, absolutely. So we ended up doing our very last taping of Beyond Vaudeville was a Kiss tribute. Weirdly enough. Do you have any memories of that, Doug? Because I remember actually talking with you before we did that episode to better understand Kiss, because I just never really got into the cult of Kiss. We happened to do that episode because of Hennigan was doing the documentary, and we worked with him to like bring in all those Kiss fans. Any memories of that episode, or those Kiss fans? Were they any surprises there?
I honestly don't remember much about that show. I mean, we did so many of them. We did 120 something over the years. So I don't recall that. I mean, I remember the episode. I don't recall anything specific about it, but I do recall when I was researching the book, I looked at Jim Hennigan's Kiss movie, his documentary, and it helped supply some info that I was looking for. So that's a nice connection.
Yeah, there was, I think we had a guy on there, a Kiss fan, who had done an original song, Put It Back On, about putting the makeup back on. The outrage that some fans felt when the makeup was removed. So anyway,
This man included.
Doug, I think we've hit everything we wanted to hit. I wanted to talk to you all about.
Look at the set. You immediately got the spirit of the show.
I do remember one guest, Jeffrey Holder, on camera, actually turning and saying, "I will not have this." So, but that was a rare occurrence. Well, Doug, thank you again so much for doing this. I encourage everyone to pre-order Born with a Tale, the Anton LaVey biography that Doug has coming out, and you can still get this online as well. They just seem a little weird. So, Doug, thanks again so much, and thank you everyone for tuning in, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.